Christopher, thanks for having me very much, and also asked me to just point to a few things that might give you a little bit of a uplift, because that's pretty dark stuff to take on a rainy day after the holidays. And there are some good news things. I guess everyone kind of weighs the good news steps being taken a little bit with the speed of the change we've just heard about and the many things holding us back from having an honest discussion about how we get to solutions. So I thought I'd just quickly run you through some of the good news stories, because there are a few out there. This report came out from Arabella Research just before the holidays about the size and speed of the divestment movement. And I, of course, know it's not the be-all and end-all of solutions to climate change, but what it has surprisingly become is the way around government. So government inaction everywhere has equaled a level of frustration, not just by individuals and by institutions like churches and universities, but also by the big funds around the world who are frustrated with the inability for governments to look at the economics and then set some guidelines to allow them to move, in a way that would cause the least possible disruption. So they've done it themselves. The Norwegian Sovereign Fund was probably the one that scared the bejesus out of everyone economically, just by the sheer size and scale of that fund. And the way they just decided one day that coal was no longer something they were going to invest in. So the size of that and the message that sent to the market was enough to really scare people, particularly in Europe, but then also increasingly in other countries. So US $5.2 trillion has been committed to divestment or has already been divested out of fossil fuels. That's a doubling of speed and divestment of just over a year. Extremely large numbers of institutions taking action and individuals, and 76 countries, not too bad. And we're seeing mainstream funds move into looking at this and how to do it and why. Certainly knowing that understanding how to do it, therefore measuring what you have to start with and then looking at a plan for moving it, is essential if you're going to protect yourself from what may come very quickly as things in the market may or may not be moving. Post-Paris, we saw kind of an uplift of that with Donald Trump. We'll see if that takes a huge setback or whether different countries who continue to go on with it will drive the change. It's worth noting that Australia is the second largest divestment numbers by country, mostly through local government councils. So over 32 councils in Australia have divested, have really led the way. Also universities, churches, and a few funds, a couple of things here and there. Nothing sort of major mainstream that's really shaken the economics side of it and the finance industry, but enough to certainly get under the skin, I guess, if you will, of the federal government as this stuff has kind of ticked along month after month after month. On the happy news of renewable energy, the cost is dropping significantly very quickly. It's now cheaper than coal in most countries of the world, and countries like India that have a real choice to make about where they're going to spend limited amounts of money to bring electricity online are looking at the low overheads of renewables and all the pluses that come with that and are moving rapidly. China, of course, is leading the trend. And just a figure there, for the next 4 years, 361 billion or 13 million jobs. It's not small stuff. And I would say probably one of the few things that might get to the federal government in this country is that little figure about China alone. And we, by and large, have given up what role we could play in the region by continuing to hold on to the fossil fuel ideology that's kept us back from jumping ahead and being a player with the likes of China as maybe a partner, or looking to the region about how we could work together and collaborate on spreading that low-carbon energy sort of solutions and systems, and something we should all be talking about around the times of the elections coming up, in Queensland and New South Wales, for instance. Battery storage, it's not something that's going to happen eventually. It's already something many, many people are taking up and using. It will change the dynamic overnight when it becomes cost efficient for many and everywhere. And I point to the jobs in Queensland because this is a story out today. We were looking at a brand new solar project in Townsville that was announced yesterday by Clean Energy Finance Corporation. And it's a tiny fraction of what we're looking at in the $1 billion NAIF funding for Adani, and yet it will produce 2,218 jobs versus 1,464 by a coal mine that we know we can't build. Seems like an obvious choice. We're going to have to make sure the Queensland government understands that, or they will go with coal. And the ideology is a mystery, why we hang on to it, besides the little bit of money that is provided by various people in fossil fuels to the political parties, to my mind, simply can't justify holding back the obvious economic case for why and how we need to move into the low-carbon economy in Australia if our economy is going to mean anything in less than a decade. It's our choice as voters, though, to make those questions heard. They simply don't come up, people don't ask, and they get away with it. There is a growing global climate change movement all over the world, and this is my trajectory. There are many other organizations doing many, many things that bring people in to be actively involved in this issue in their local community, at a national level, and globally. But I just wanted to share with you that when we had a Pacific Warriors photo down below blockade of the Newcastle Harbor, like 6 or 8 little homemade canoes, wooden, traditionally made canoes. 12 people from 12 countries took part around the Pacific. There were probably 400 people on the beach in support of those people taking out into the harbor to stop the ships from coming through, or trying to. People's Climate March alone, there were, according to Time magazine, 450,000 people in New York City alone, but worldwide, well over 1 million people took part in various places around the world. And in virtually every country in the world, there was some form of being part of that day. Paris, there were so many events, despite the ban on the march, for instance, that was meant to happen, that it was almost impossible to keep up with the number of things that were going on. Some very small, some large, some happening outside of France because you couldn't do them in Paris. But they were literally springing up everywhere. And last year, we took part in organizing Break Free around the world, which was an astronomical number of people, not just willing to protest, but willing to literally blockade things from happening. So in Newcastle, we had 1,200 people on the beach, 450 kayaks in the water to stop shipments of coal through the harbor. And that sentiment that I'm ready to step up is certainly happening more and more around the world. Now, I put the question, Trump, there just to wrap up, to ask all of you, have we not been inspired by how quickly people are responding in creative ways to derail Trump, to challenge Trump, to voice their concern? For instance, in the UK, I think they're up to 1.6 million signatures on the petition to stop him from coming to the UK. And that includes people across Scotland, Wales, and the UK collectively. The speed at which people are creatively coming up with ways, and certainly heartwarming to see all the various departments of within government, park services, scientific bodies, NOAA, NASA, having these sort of alternative tweet streams coming up to counter the challenge to science. So I think you give people a big challenge and they get excited, and they more and more will be looking for ways to take on the resistance, be part of it, and challenge it. And in many ways, to my mind, climate is at the center of that. So take heart. There are things we can and must do, but we're going to have to work together to get creative about how we challenge these kinds of things that we've just heard about. So what to do next? In Australia, we have to stop the Adani mine, and the message must be so strong in Australia that the government and industry understands that any new attempt at a new coal mine will be challenged, will be delayed, will be fought legally, will be fought with protests, will be fought in every possible way, and at the finance level. Dakota, tar sands, each one of these offers us an opportunity to say, no, it can't happen, and for us to collectively work together to bring numbers of people to make sure that doesn't happen. So thanks for having me today, and I'd love to get into a discussion with all of you, with our two experts. Thank you.